This right here is the Insta360 Link, a small, gimbal-based AI webcam that can track you. And this is the DJI Ronin RS3 Pro, equipped with a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro and DJI's top-of-the-line Lidar-based autofocus and tracking. Both these cameras feature tracking, 4K resolution, autofocus, and they are technically stabilized. So, I was curious to see, can you really compare these two with such a drastic price difference? For being such a small little webcam, being able to get such, here I'll get in real close for you guys, but able to get like such fine detail, especially because this is just supposed to be a webcam, yet the gimbal stabilization on this is so impressive. So I'm going to start by putting them side by side. I'm going to put the Insta360 Link on the left and the DJI Ronin RS3 Pro on the right with the Blackmagic Cinema. I want to just showcase the difference in stability, and keep in mind it just shows how well this is designed if this webcam, which is not designed to be moving at all, it's supposed to sit on top of a monitor, can go around and move like this and still do such a good job stabilizing the image. Now, albeit there is some micro jitters and it is pretty obvious, you can still occasionally see a little bit of a jitter here, but I'd say this is pretty good given the size and the price, especially for something it wasn't designed to do. I also want to showcase the picture quality here, because this is something you can kind of see, especially if you start zooming into the areas. You're looking at a 1/2 inch sensor versus something that's almost 1.4 inches. It's about like 3 times larger. But overall, I still was able to take this around and get some really cinematic shots without any manufacturer support. Also, a quick detail comparison. I noticed that the image that the Insta360 Link generates is slightly, I want to say, saturated, as well as some of the darkers being substantially darker. Maybe that's just, of course, attributed to the amount of light that this lens lets in. What I've been noticing so far is in low light, this really struggles, which I find interesting because this is a webcam you're supposed to keep inside. Like, not everyone has super fancy lights. I mean, if you're spending $300 on a webcam, then maybe that's something to consider. My recommendations, if I were to change anything, would just be to have the ability, like you have like the zoom, right? And you have the tracking, but have some ability to also like maybe move the cam without having to necessarily put your hand up and have it track you. A shape or something to move the cam, like maybe like, I don't know, hang loose or whatever, and then just have it, go over there and move the cam and it would follow your hand rather than just your face. And then, of course, when you let go of that, it would keep the cam where it is, just allowing for better movement and stuff. So another feature that this webcam offers that, of course, you're not going to get on a cinema gimbal setup, which is the ability to have this top-down overhead view, which is actually not physically moving the camera, but the camera does some warping with the image and kind of makes it appear that it's a top-down image. This, of course, does end up sacrificing some pixels, and of course in the low light here it's not doing the best, but I'd say this is a pretty cool feature, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the framing for the whiteboards. I also want to show you my personal use for the whiteboard mode. It's actually not on a whiteboard. I actually ended up using this for a school presentation where I utilized like a TV in my university as the background, and then had everyone kind of present in front of it. It was pretty much really easy to switch back and forth from having everyone standing in front of the TV and presenting to like a full screen view of the screen, which I demonstrate here. So I'm going to do 3 different audio tests. We're going to do one like a normal setup distance, like about a hand's length. And then we're going to do an outside test like 6 feet away. And then we're going to do a test really close up. So this is clearly me talking about a meter away. And we'll get nice and up close and personal. How you doing? I'm just going to remind you, it's a good time to subscribe. You should probably consider doing that. Let's jump over to outside real quick and we'll test it. So this is a pretty standard test of me outside. I'm actually surprised in the low light the hand signals actually work. Another issue that I'm noticing too is that in low light, a lot of these hand signals that were advertised, they seem to be very finicky, if not working at all. Now keep in mind this is a relatively well lit room. I mean, if this was like a late night stream or something you're doing, you didn't want to turn on a bunch of lights, you couldn't use the hand signals and you'd have to do it manually. I'm going to do some more video comparison real quick, just showing off the focusing performance. I'm going to go put my face really close here. Howdy. And I'm also going to put my face really close here, down here on the little camera here. Also, I want to try to do a side-by-side comparison of the active tracking. See if we can get the cam to follow you. There we go. And I've got both cameras recording now. And I'm going to be interested to see, comparison-wise, what the side-by-side comparison is. Now, obviously, you got a big handle over here. But just some like tracking, some jumping up and down, just see the differences. Now, obviously with the Ronin, you have a whole bunch of active tracking. Also keep in mind you have focusing too. So both these cameras are going to be able to focus in response to movement. Now, albeit this is like a cinema camera versus like a little webcam, but you still have active tracking. You still have, and I'm gonna call it active tracking even though it's like DJI's version. You've got all this option. And then if you hold up your finger, so now it stops tracking. And I will say that like compared to the DJI Ronin, this is a feature that I kind of like, because I'm usually going through and I'm recording, I'm recording from a distance and I don't want to constantly have to track things and have to go run over to the camera, change things, and then track them. So as I said, in low light situations, which we are kind of getting towards dusk, this is like 4 in the afternoon, then of course the camera is going to struggle. The other issue too that I've noticed too is this cam has a certain radius that it will track you in, whereas the Ronin, for example, can go really far. So if we go over here real quick, you'll start hitting the camera boundary here, whereas where you wouldn't otherwise with the Ronin. So albeit this is a webcam, which is designed to sit on your monitor, you're not going to have people going behind your monitor usually. So I understand that choice, but usually the same, like the slip rings and stuff that you're putting in a gimbal, usually have no limitations. I'd be interested to see if I took this apart, what the hardware limitation would be for that. But yeah, so there's just lots of just walking around, tracking, comparing the Ronin to the Insta360 Link. And let's do a little something different. Let's go up these steps real quick. So I'm gonna try doing something that's really hard, obviously. So the Ronin's caught me. If I keep my face involved, you can kind of see the difference between the Ronin. I come back down the steps. So both cams do seem to follow. If I go behind the steps, of course, it's gonna be hard to track. But going back and forth real quickly, it does seem like both cameras do a really good job in that tracking department. So then the final question to ask yourself is, based off this testing today, what is your end goal? The Insta360 Link is an indoor camera. I would argue that the low light performance is pretty poor in certain circumstances, and especially when it's relying on that low light performance to do a lot of these hand commands. Like, it's a 50-50 shot whether or not that works or whether or not it will engage. Like, as you can see right now, it's not engaging. And I feel like that's probably a light issue. And that's just because you're running a smaller sensor. You're looking at something that's like the 6K Pro. Hello, bud. You're looking at a difference between a 6K Pro camera sensor, Blackmagic, versus something that's a ½ an inch. I definitely could see this replacing a lot of like indoor streaming setups where you have maybe multiple cameras instead of having a cameraman follow you. And ultimately, there's one final point, and that's the convenience. If you want something that you don't have to recharge, that you don't have to have a wireless transmitter system for, that you don't have to constantly upkeep and manage, if you want something that you don't have to necessarily record physically on the device, that you can directly hook up to anything, there is flat out nothing like the Insta360 Link out there that can compete. The amount of equipment that it would require to do this on the Ronin would be pretty complicated. While it could be done, the Ronin would still need to be recharged if you're running it on a battery, and you would still need a whole wireless transmitter system to pick it up. Would the quality be good? Of course. But would it really be worth the price difference? I don't think so. And my disclaimer, of course, is that Insta360 sent this to me. My current rig is partly sponsored by different companies, and then of course some of it I paid for. I really do think that this webcam would come in handy going forward for live streams indoors if I could light it up enough, and I think it offers something that's not really out there on the market and has a cool niche use. So would I of course use it in the way that I used it in today's video? Probably not,